very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. As always, we'll bring you up to speed with the big happenings in the country and around the world. I'm always here with my people. Guys.
Well, Kayode and Jeffrey, it is not just what we do that makes us accountable. It also has to do with what we do not do that makes us accountable. This should be very much Accountability Wednesday. Good morning. Welcome to your perfect morning starter right here on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Kayode Okikulu. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, so it's heavy on our heart this period because of what happened and played out in Ibadan. But Kayode, you have all the more of that detail. Maybe share with us exactly, because we're hearing different version of the same event. Whether you're listening to the police or you're listening to an eyewitness or the people that were involved themselves, but what exactly played out from what you know?
Well, first of all, condolences to the family of the boy who was killed. It was an avoidable death, very avoidable. In fact, the most avoidable death. And sadly, this is a young Nigerian who has a future ahead of him. But sadly, this happened, and apologies for that. Sadly, that happened in Ibadan. So there are different accounts. This story broke first online, and this is a video that was eventually put out by the Road Traffic Management Authority. So their account and the account of the police is that the driver of that car was driving against traffic, and there's been like a joint operation to enforce the law against the traffic rules. So it was at this time that a policeman aimed at the tire of this vehicle to try to stop the vehicle. But the account of the police says that the policeman missed. And that's when the bullet hit the boy who was in the car. So the account of the police says that the father of the boy was the one driving against traffic. They were trying to stop him, and the policeman shot, didn't hit the target, which is the tire, instead hit the boy. Then eventually the father stopped in front, and you would eventually see what played out afterwards. But this first again is very, very avoidable. It's a case of trying to use a wrong to correct another wrong. Whatever, I mean, this is a traffic situation. I know that the police in their statement said that the situation was a bit suspicious. They were suspicious of the driver, and that's why they tried to immobilize the vehicle. But there are certainly better ways. If you're not sure of your shot, do not take the shot, particularly in a public place. Again, the police says that the policeman is under investigation, has been arrested. But that is the account we had. Earlier on, reports on social media had suggested that the police were chasing an internet fraudster when this happened. But the police and the Oyo State government said, no, that was not what happened. This, they say, is what happened. But as I said, avoidable. You can't use a wrong to correct another wrong. There needs to be better training, certainly, for this. It's said to be a corporal that did this. There needs to be better training. This is very avoidable, guys.
This is not just avoidable, this is heartbreaking, and there's so many layers to this. It speaks to institutional failure, and it speaks to individual failure as well, I must say, if you consider that the driver of the vehicle was also driving against traffic and was trying to escape, some form of accountability by the authorities. And just last week, we were talking about a young Nigerian who took her own life because she failed an exam for which the authorities later took responsibility for. And, you know, it brings up that age-long line that just may never go away, and we hope that it does go away. That prayer, rhetorical prayer, that may Nigeria never happen to us. There's an attempt, currently by an agency of government to use that tagline to rewrite a narrative, but it goes beyond rhetoric. It goes beyond, a surface attempt to deploy that line to reshape narrative. There must be institutional reform if Nigeria is going to work for everyone. And there must be individual reform as well if Nigeria is going to work for everyone. I can't forget Dr. Diaso, who died a very unfortunate death due to elevator failure. I can't forget Dr. Chinwe, who, according to reports, was less than a few months away from jackpying from Nigeria to the west in search of greener pastures, but she met an untimely death in a train transport from, I believe, Abuja to Kaduna. These are the stories that make Nigeria, you know, sigh time and again about how the system continues to fail. And, you know, it reminds me of the report that is coming from the House of Reps from yesterday, that the Southeast Caucus is calling for the resignation of the, you know, JAM registrar over the failure of the system that led to the mass failure, wrongfully so, of some Nigerians. But is the Southeast Caucus, and indeed the entire National Assembly, going to call for the failure of the executive, the resignation of the executive over the continuous death of the people of the North Central? Who's going to take responsibility for that? Everyone must take accountability for the failure to do what they're supposed to do, you know, or what they didn't do that led to a system breakdown at one point or the other.
Well, we're just, both of you have said, I don't want to add anything. I just feel that this is avoidable. This is poor training. Don't just be, this is my advice to everyone in Nigeria. Don't be a victim. I'm sorry, but don't be a victim in Nigeria. That boy or that child is now dead, and now we're having a conversation. Just something that the policeman should have just used. It's a populated area. You don't need training to use common sense. It's common sense. But I don't want to get into all of that. My colleagues have said enough. But let's bring you up to speed with the things we're doing today. As we said, our thoughts and our prayers with the families. We're going to explore that conversation maybe later on the show, or maybe tomorrow. But let's bring you up to speed with the things we're doing today on the program, and that has to do with the incidents of building collapse in parts of the country. A real estate consultant will be joining us to dissect and enlighten us on what needs to be done to curb future occurrences as far as building collapse is concerned. Lagos used to be the hub, but it seems like it got better and then started again at some point. But whether it's Lagos or anywhere else around the country, we will talk about why and how buildings are collapsing. Guys.
And on today's edition of InnovateHer Breakfast, we'll take our exploits outside Nigeria to another African country, Zambia to be precise, where we'll be speaking with Lillian Timbo Mutwalu, an executive that is leading the digital revolution with open access fiber infrastructure in that country. Okay, so let's get familiar with our neighbors this morning.
And to another big story that got Nigerians talking, worried, concerned. After some thorough analysis and investigations, the Budget Foundation says it found out that the National Assembly inserted, get this, over 11,000 projects worth 6.93 trillion naira into the 2025 federal budget. So we'll be speaking with the CEO of the foundation as we look to go in-depth into the issues and properly analyze their findings.
Absolutely. So that's exactly one of the things we're going to be looking at today on the program.
And of course, legendary Ben joins us. Did someone say sharp? Oh, yes. Legendary Ben is our guest on the show today. One of the trending content creators in Nigeria, has a very brilliant approach to the way he creates his content. So we're going to have the sharp master joining us on the show this morning.
And we're going to have the bike mistress as well join us on the show today. Yeah, there she is. Very inspiring Joy Ebide, Nigeria's celebrated adventurer on the bike, is embarking on another bold one. This time she's covering 11,000 kilometer solo ride from South Africa to Kenya. I'm not joining her, and nobody here is joining her. She's going to come and talk to us about it.
Even if you pay me, I ain't doing it.
If we pay you good money.
No, anything on two legs in that, because I was driving yesterday, I think on the Ikorodu Road, I had to ask what's going on because of the sound. No, on Third Mainland Bridge.
Right.
And then this power bike. I don't know the names, but some of those things are more expensive than the cars.
Vehicles.
And I heard the sound, I was like, what's going on? And I remember, oh, somebody's showing off.
I hope the person didn't go beyond 80, because on Third Mainland Bridge, just better.
That person will have to deal with Mrs. Kisha and the Lagos State government. I have no business.
But certainly, it's a packed show for you today. We started on that sad note. with some of the trending issues regarding the death of the boy, very avoidable, sad death in Ibadan. But there's some other issues making the rounds on social media. So we're moving to this protests, the finance ministry over welfare. So we had TUC protesting yesterday at the finance ministry. And what was a protest about? Welfare. And yes, these are the workers who are saying, well, stop the delay, pay us now. Well, it's been a long-running issue, really, I must say, with this protest. But the workers are saying, we're not going to take this anymore. Not something needs to give, essentially. So that's one of the issues that made the rounds yesterday.
So when you have finance people, when you have workers at finance ministry saying welfare, and TUC is there, a lot of senior people there as well, you know, and all of that. So it's very concerning. But we hope that we haven't heard a response. I don't think I've seen a response yet from the Minister of Finance as far as this is concerned. But let's move on from there to the federal government. You remember that incident where the EFCC had actually seized and forfeited, that's the word I was looking for, the property linked to Emefiele. We understand there are about 753 housing unit estates. I wish we could show that video, that picture. It was very expansive land. So we've been talking about housing deficit, and this is an opportunity for them to, you know, close that gap in that sense. So we understand this property is linked to the former CBN governor, Mr. Emefiele, who is in battle right now, going in and out of court. 700, I'm going to say that number again. I think this is the highest the EFCC has ever seized in terms of housing or housing units. 753 housing unit estate recovered from Emefiele. But let's hear what you are saying. It's an old story, but this is because the federal government is planning to sell it. O Square says, imagine if FG is transparent for the first time in selling the estates to ordinary Nigerians.
Well, so
that would be nice.
Jeff, if you're calling on
I'd like
the
to
federal
buy.
government to use it to fill the housing gap, you're certainly not asking Nigerians of middle class to come forward to see if they can purchase it, because I'm confident that it will be well beyond the reach of the average Nigerian.
That is if another person in government doesn't buy half of it with government money.
You answered the question.
And then resell it, because that's what happens. If I tell you, it's not everything you can say on TV. If we really want to fix Nigeria, a lot of people in government, I mean a lot, will be in jail. I'm going to say that again. If we want to fix Nigeria, a lot of people in government right now and who have just served government will be in jail. Because what goes on now is that some of them take government property. Before they came into government, we kind of knew them. Then they became people in government, became super rich.
Unrecognizable.
And then literally, some of these guys, they no longer buy houses, they buy streets, they buy crescents, they buy avenues. What kind of money did they make on their own to have this kind of property? So I'm telling you that if the EFCC is not careful, big shout out to this chairman of the EFCC who has done this incredible work in recovering these assets. But you should also watch out to make sure that another politician or somebody linked to power doesn't buy half of it or all of it and start reselling.
Well, big shout out to him, but we're still waiting for him to charge the chairman of Tantita Security Services, Tompolo, for abuse of Naira. But what are you saying beyond what we're saying? Abe Lee says, at official EFCC, you guys have to see this one through and through. Don't let the selling bidding process be fraudulent, so the self-thought high and mighty will not hijack it. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I didn't even see that before I said it.
So absolutely. I think it's just the natural thing to think about. The EFCC handing this over to the Minister of Housing, saying, well, do with it as you wish. And that's where the next comment comes in. Renegade, that's South African Renegade, says, where's the FCT Minister? Jump on this. Use it to solve housing problems for low-income earners via mortgage. I really hope that the fact that this is subject of litigation in some sense will also not affect it in that sense, because you understand how this came to be in the first place. But it's good to see let's wait to see how it works, particularly with this mortgage bit.
So let's put it again. So those alleged criminals in government, the people who steal our monies, we are trying to save the money, and people are stealing the monies we are recovering. Please stay away from this property. Please, so that it can reach everybody. Kade, you have the next one.
Well, so this video, again, made the rounds. Flooding in Lekki, Lagos, and got a lot of people talking yet again about the state of Lagos, the infrastructure. Again, that infamous line of is Lagos smelling or not has come up yet again, and it split people across. And people are saying, well, it's something we noticed, right? So help us fix it as government. Others say that, well, why don't you say this about other states and all of that? But this raises a fundamental issue. There needs to be joint efforts from the people and government to make Lagos the standard that we want it to be.
I remember that, you know, the rains are only just starting, and the prediction for this year is that, you know, some parts will be intense, will experience intense flooding. So the work is cut out for those at the Ministry of Environment in Lagos to see to it that Lekki residents do not suffer, you know, this unwholesome experience when another intense rainfall happens.
Maybe we'll invite Mr. Tokumbo again to come and respond to some of these things. So I don't like certain kind of arguments. So when people say, oh, part of Lagos is smelling and all of that, they are actually correct. Not everywhere in Lagos is smelling, but there are parts of Lagos is smelling. And again, you need to travel out of Lagos to other places and see why people are saying the things they are saying. I've been around, and I live in Lagos, so I have the panoramic view of the few places I've been to compare to Lagos as to the state of the environment, the smell of the environment. So nobody's trying to, this is the commercial hub of a country, come on. But we can do better, all right? Okay, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll bring you, you know, the very conversations we're having on the program. Join us again.
Welcome back. So it's still your perfect morning starter right here on Channels Television. And this morning, we're kicking off our conversation with the concern over the rising spate of building collapses in the country. And it's a very important conversation to have, especially because in the last couple of weeks or so, we've experienced yet, you know, another round of building collapses in Idiaraba area of Mushin. There was an ongoing construction that collapsed, and one person was recovered dead and some others rescued. And I can't forget in a hurry the building collapse that happened weeks back in Ojodubaga area of Lagos, where the location was set to be a restaurant that, you know, attracted a number of visitors, and a number of people also died in that collapse. And it's a very worrying one. So what do we do to ensure that, you know, we do not continue to lament about building collapses in the country? And joining us this morning to have this conversation, we have Mr. Laulu Alabi. He's the group CEO, Damilare Baker, and a real estate consultant, and he's also an architect. He joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Alabi, this morning. You know, I just recalled the latest round of building collapses, you know, but according to the Building Collapse Prevention Guild, over 600 buildings have collapsed in Nigeria between 1974 and now. I believe the latest date in that report by the Guild was 2022, the latest date. And for me, what's, you know, concerning is that the building collapses from about the 70s were fewer than what we have in recent times. What do you find to be, you know, the reason in this defining difference?
Thank you very much. Good morning. So yes, I feel like there are lots of factors that contribute to the state of the collapses that we've experienced in Lagos and generally in Nigeria over the last few years. I think underlining most of this on ethical practices, you know, within the industry, and then you have there's this swarm of what you say lack of technical individuals coming into the real estate industry. Now, that in itself should not be a problem, because as a businessman, you can actually play in the real estate industry. But then when you're not a built environment professional, and then you're playing in the industry without having built environment professionals, you know, within your company, your organization, then there's a problem. Or better still, when you believe that you're the developer, you're the one financing projects, and so you undermine the, as the case may be, the advice given to you by your built environment professional. We're likely to see some of the things that we're seeing. I believe that a lot of intervention has gone into play. However, over the last few years, the government has been quite proactive, you know, in trying to curb the building collapses that we've experienced. It's unfortunate that we had yet another one in the Mushin area, like you mentioned. But I believe that a lot is going on to try to curb this incessant collapses. I know that the Lagos State Building Control Agency and the Lagos State Fiscal Planning Permit Authority are actually working hand in hand, you know, even with the professionals in the industry, you know, to try to curb this. So some initiatives have been brought up in recent times. One of them is the Certified Accreditor Program, CAP, which they're trying to partner with the private sector, you know, in a bid to curb what we have, the collapses that we've been having in recent times.
One of the reasons why we're having this conversation, I know that recently it has kind of come down, but there was a time it was like every other, maybe months, we have incidents of building collapsing in the country. And so, on one hand, it looks like we are reactive than being proactive. So what, in your view, in terms of policy direction, just like Bukola has asked, that we need to do to be 10 steps ahead? Because simple ideology of how our geography is, our environment is, tells you what kind of building to put up where. It is as simple as basics in architecture. But you see places, you go to certain places, and even as a lay person, you're looking at the building and you're worried at the state of that building. So policy direction here is, how can citizens be involved? Because there's the mindset of citizens that, what's my business, until it happens close to you. So what kind of policy direction should government be putting in place at the subnational level? I don't even want to call the federal government. At the subnational level, to help government on one hand, and how government can incentivize people to help in reporting these places as much as possible to government, to help government to do their work, so that we don't have casualties in terms of property destruction and people dying. Okay. I'm talking about policy now.
Yes. So as a matter of fact, I'm privy to know that there are a couple of policies actually on the way in that regard. One of them is what they call the whistleblower policy, right, which I believe that the Lagos Ministry of Urban Planning is actually working on, in which they're going to empower citizens that when you see something, you say something. There are going to probably be lines out there where you can...
Sorry, are citizens aware that whistleblower policy applies to things like this?
Yes,
because we're used to it for reporting.
Correct. So this is actually, so it was supposed to be part of the Certified Accreditor program that was launched recently. A face of it is a whistleblower. So it's not going to be a general whistleblower policy. It's directed at the housing sector, the construction sector. So there's going to be a lot of activity around that, so people can know that, oh, this policy is so it hasn't been enforced. It hasn't come into practice yet, but it's something that the ministry is working on, so that people can actually, you see a construction site beside you, you think something is going wrong, you can send numbers, you can send a message to, you know, some designated numbers, and then officials will be on ground. I think one of the issues Lagos State has had, and I'll use Lagos State as a case study, is enforcement, adequate enforcement. These laws are available, these policies are available, but I think enforcement has been a problem. And so the government is trying to see, you know what, we need to know what is happening where, so that we can act as opposed to react. So for instance, when you see what you call the project boards, right, which is supposed to have the list of professionals. Now, a lot of buildings going on within and around Lagos don't even have those project boards. So those are some of the things that the government is enforcing. You see a project that doesn't have a project board, you report that project, so that we find out what is going on, because having a project board is part of the law, in building in Lagos State. So I believe that the government is beginning right now, not just to be reactive, but to try to put our policies out there that can actually help us, curb something like that. I think recently, it must have been after the Mushin collapse, the government now says that building construction hours is now limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, before now, people do shifts. They build at night. But the government is saying, listen, until there's a need, a particular need in which you have to come to ask for express permission, construction starts at 7, ends at 6 p.m. We don't want anybody sleeping in construction sites anymore. So that, again, I believe that they're just trying all they can as much as possible to try to reduce, the number of collapses and the things that can, cause collapse, within the state.
These conversations are linked. Just before we came to you, we're talking about debates around the environmental situation in Lagos. The smell in some areas that some people have noticed. The government saying no. This smell didn't just happen. It's as a result of the human factor. People dumping refuse, or you have the PSPs. That's the private sector refuse collectors maybe not doing their work. So it's a mix of a lot of things. Or even the ministry itself not enforcing as it ought to. So let's zoom out in that sense and talk about the urban plan of Lagos State. So this is where buildings are meant to be. This is where the drainage is meant to be. This is how waste should be managed. From your experience as a real estate person, what exactly is the big factor here that we're maybe not looking at or addressing? Is it government negligence? Is it human factor? Is it the do you know who I am kind of thing, so people just do anything in that sense? Why is Lagos not what we desire it to be in that sense? I know there are other states that have their issues, but let's talk about Lagos.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Recently, I don't know if you saw it in the news, there was this video of, and I won't mention him, a celebrity restaurant, a restaurant owned by a celebrity recently, and then at night in Lekki one, the trucks of the restaurant, they go and they dump refuse. So I'm saying that, and these are the same people that would come out and say, Lagos is smelling, Lagos is dirty. I'm saying that we as citizens, we have a lot to play in all of this. This refuse is not used by aliens, they're used by us. You see what I'm saying? I know the government will do their part, but I feel like we owe ourselves the responsibility, to keep our place, to keep our own surroundings clean. People are trying to avoid making the necessary payments that they're supposed to make for this. If we go back to the master plan, if Lagos should enforce some of the master plan of Lagos State to the strictest, there's going to be riots all over the place. Because the level of demolition that would happen, we probably won't be having this conversation. Eventually we will start saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. If the government, as the case may be, actually decides to enforce in some of those areas, it won't be a simple conversation. And so what do we need to do? The government needs to come and try to be as diplomatic as possible. Okay, what can we? Even the Ministry of Environment in recent times, when they go to, they've been to the Lekki Ibeju axis, and then they've been demolishing properties on the drainage line. It's been a lot of uproar. The same citizens are going to come back and say that, no, you cannot do this. This is the livelihood of people. So, that balance, trying to strike that balance is actually a work for not mere human beings, because it's a lot. It's a lot. So you're wondering, how do we restore the state, without causing riots or uproar or protest, So I believe that balance is what they are, trying to achieve.
And government must also take culpability or responsibility, because some of these approvals to build were given by people in government.
A lot of them don't even have approvals. A lot of them don't have. The number of approvals in Lagos is less than the last time we checked, about 35 to 40%. So again, it's another conversation, when we talk about.
We can't blame citizens for that. We can't blame citizens for that, can we?
Yes, so yes, you
Sorry,
can
Bukola.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so yes, I think it's really not about who to blame, who not to blame. The truth is that you want to start a construction. The processes now, I'm in the real estate sector. I understand the processes for obtaining approvals. These processes are not shrouded in secrecy. They're out there. But every now and again, you want to do a construction. You feel like, oh, if the officials come, I would just give them something. I would go on my construction. You will see a lot of buildings with X and X and X all over the place, you know, and the next morning, people are still building in sealed sites, you know. And there are people around. A time is going to come in Lagos State where we see sealed signs, and the citizens will stand up and say, no, you cannot continue to build until you go and clarify whatever it is that this thing is about. It's going to be a joint responsibility. I do not believe that the government can do this by themselves. I believe that you and I are going to have to sit up at some point and decide that to protect my environment, I'm going to make sure that nobody does any irregularities around me. And I think that would be the way forward very soon.
We still need to speak to government regulation.
I agree.
Because if you go to the island, you still see some buildings that are not more than 4 inches apart from each other. And these are not small buildings. They're not one-story buildings. They're not bungalows. They're 3 stories, 4 stories. And you have to ask yourself, who approved, you know, these buildings? And, you know, it's partly one of the reasons I asked the first question. Because when you go to the island, yes, yet again, you find older buildings from the 60s, from the 50s that are still standing strong. So why is there, you know, the law of diminishing returns seemingly setting in where regulation is concerned? That's on the one hand for government. On the other hand, for the professionals, they have an association. What's the missing link in holding accountable developers who do not follow the rules for building procedure?
Okay, so let me take one after the other. I think in terms of, again, I know that recently, maybe over the last 1 or 2 years, the Ministry of Fiscal Planning and Urban Development came up with an amnesty program where they actually were trying to get people to come in with buildings without approvals so that they can actually regularize those buildings. The ones that have infractions, they'll discuss how those infractions can be resolved. Because like I said, the level of compliance in terms of approvals is very low. And so the government is saying, okay, you know, we know that this has happened. Now come forward, let's have this conversation. Let's see what we can do to, you know, to get you back into the system. That's on one hand. But yes, like you said, the government has a huge part to play. In terms of the quality of buildings, you know, in recent times, it's a lot contributes to this. The rising cost of building materials, the use of inferior materials. So you have people using, so for instance, you know, recently someone brought a batch of reinforcements to our sites. And upon inspection, we realized that this reinforcement is substandard. Substandard doesn't necessarily mean that the building would collapse, but it might also mean that the building would dilapidate very fast, right? So there's a tensile strength, there's a quality that even though we say, oh, 20 mm reinforcement, 20 mm reinforcement is not 20 mm reinforcement. It means that even though it's 20 mm, there also needs to be a quality that 20 mm reinforcement must give you, a strength that it must give you. But in a climb where they say, oh, the one that would give you this strength would cost 1 million. Well, we have another one that can cost, you know, 700,000 per ton. And the developer goes, oh, will the building collapse? No, it won't collapse. They start to use it. Now, it might not collapse in maybe 1, 2-story buildings, but the buildings will start to erode very fast. You begin to look at that. This building is supposed to be 5 years old. Why is it looking this way? Those are some of the things that contribute to these things.
We can't stop asking these questions of the regulators, either at the government level or at the professional level.
Correct.
And so we're certainly going to have you back. We hope this time around, you know, to talk progress and not another building collapse. We must thank you very much, Mr. Laolu Alabi, Group CEO, Damilare Baker, a real estate consultant and architect who has joined us right here in our Lagos studio. Thank you for your time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And from here, we'll move on to another interesting conversation. This time, we'll be talking tech revolution in another part of the world. But before that, let's go to the front pages and find out what the headlines are saying. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back, and we'll take definitely a review of the front pages later on. But let's get better acquainted with our neighbors, shall we? So on today's edition of InnovateHer Breakfast, we'll be celebrating the success story of a female in the tech world, in Zambia to be precise. She is Lillian Tembo Mutwalu. She's the managing director, Biobab Zambia. And she joins us virtually from Lusaka, the capital of Zambia. Good morning, Lillian. How are you doing this morning? And how is Zambia? How is Lusaka?
Good morning. Good morning. Lusaka is amazing. The weather is good. We're getting into winter. How's Nigeria? How's Lagos?
Oh, Lagos is beautiful. The weather is beautiful as well. We're hovering between rain and cool weather. But let's talk the weather in the tech world. Zambia is set to be experiencing a tech revolution that is transforming processes, not just for entrepreneurs and the finance world, but in government processes as well. And we know that it was not always this way. So first of all, talk to us about what's responsible for this tech revolution in Zambia.
Thank you so much. Like you rightly put it, Zambia right now is going through a very fast-paced digital transformation. You may or may not know, Zambia is surrounded by 8 neighboring countries. We are a land-linked country. We actually don't call ourselves landlocked anymore. We are a land-linked country, and we have 8 neighbors around us. So what we have done, I think from the industry perspective, the tech industry perspective, is that we've been very deliberate to leverage on our position, our central position, to ensure that we are a transit point, whether it's internet traffic from the east to the west or from the north to the south. And like many other countries right now, I mean, there's a move for AI transformation that is happening, and we don't want to be left behind as a country. And we have been very deliberate as an industry really to push the agenda of digital transformation to ensure that our processes are digitized, whether it's in our education system, our government processes, or even the SMEs that are coming up now. They are coming up with digital transformation initiatives. So we are trying to keep up with the world, with the rest of the world, and also just we are trying to be a leader in the southern part of the continent.
That's amazing to hear because the world needs, to not just, particularly Africa now, not just to play catch up as far as the digital transformation is concerned, but to have a seat at the table. But, your bio says that you're leading a digital revolution with access to fiber infrastructure and, a push for inclusivity. Before we talk about inclusivity, let's talk about the infrastructure bit of it. In many parts of Africa, there are a lot of challenges bedeviling access to infrastructure for service providers as far as the digital revolution is concerned. What's the story in Zambia as far as the ease of doing business aspect of fiber infrastructure for digital connectivity is concerned? How is Zambia making a difference in this area and making business, friendly for service providers?
So in Zambia, really, like many other countries, I'll start with some of the challenges that we have experienced, and I'll go into how we've been able to overcome that. Firstly, it's just availability of infrastructure. I'm currently running a fiber company, a wholesale fiber company, and you will appreciate that to roll out this fiber infrastructure, it's actually very capex heavy, capital intensive, and it's access to capital that tends to be a challenge for most players in the industry. The other one that we have experienced is a challenge of power. Infrastructure cannot run without access to power. But we have a very, very supportive government and the regulator in this country. And the fact that the agenda for digital transformation is at the heart of what the government is pushing for. We have received a lot of support from the government, and they've really opened it up to private entities to come in and invest in the industry and to invest in the technology industry as well as the power industry. When I speak of Baobab Zambia, we are just over 3 years old in this country, but in these 3 years, we have been able to roll out just over 7,000 kilometers of fiber infrastructure, and the government and the regulator made that possible. And we have seen a lot of support from the government coming in whether you're bringing in solar equipment to supplement the hydropower that we have been dependent on for a very long time as a country. And we have seen all those incentives that the government has put in place just to support the initiatives that the private sector is coming in with to develop the digital and the technology space. So I think as a country, we know what we want to achieve. We have identified and really appreciate our positioning as a land-linked country, as I earlier mentioned. And we're really leveraging on that to ensure that the industry is well supported from a private and public sector perspective as well. So there's a lot of investment that has come in from private players. The government has allowed that to happen. And there's a lot of investment also that is coming in the energy sector to complement what we're doing in the technology industry as well.
I'd like you to speak to us about the cost angle of this. I mean, here in Nigeria, there's been a lot of debate around the cost of data. I mean, some say it's too expensive, beyond the reach of particularly those at the lower rung of the ladder. In the digital world that we're in, you can hardly do anything without the internet, without data. So how are you navigating this conversation of cost, understanding that you have your own obligations, you have the infrastructure? A lot of these things are bought in dollars, right? But you have to then localize the costs in such a way that it's not beyond the reach of people, but it's also keeping you in business to make profit.
That has been a challenge. Data has moved from being a luxury to a must-have, right? And it doesn't matter who you are, what business you are in. You need to have access to make your phone call. You need to have access to surf the internet. We have in schools, we see that we are moving a lot. We are evolving a lot from using even textbooks to using the internet. You have the evolution of AI, and there's a lot of components that come into play when we look at the total cost of data. And for Zambia particularly, we do not have access to the cost. That means we have to import this data. As much as we have this terrestrial infrastructure in our country, we still need to find our way to connect to the coast, to connect to the internet, and bring it back into the country. And that is a cost. But what we have managed to navigate the area of cost from an infrastructure perspective. What we have been deliberate about is really and the government really has supported us in pushing this. There's a regulation that was passed, and this is a co-location regulation. So for those of us that are in the industry of providing fiber infrastructure, there's a regulation that helps us to co-locate on this infrastructure. As an example, if as Baobab Zambia have laid infrastructure in a particular area and another player wants lay their infrastructure in the same area, the regulator demands that we co-locate, whether we're going to use the same poles, and that significantly tends to reduce the cost of data eventually. So there's co-location that we have we have invested in, and which we are doing. The area of energy as well. you cannot run a site, a base station, for example, on diesel 24/7. You need to invest in things like solar power to supplement the times when we do not have power. I think we share the same challenges with Nigeria, that access to power is really a challenge. And once we invest in these alternative power solutions, we have seen that with the incentives that the government has put in terms of taxes, lowering the taxes, and making some of these the equipment that we bring in, energy equipment, to be zero rated in terms of tax, that has also helped us to lower the data cost. We are working to ensure that going forward, and the customers demand it really because of the need, that for data that most of our customers have, it will continue to go down. The cost will continue to go down. It is imperative for us as the players in the industry to ensure that we find innovative ways to bring down the cost of bringing in this equipment and rolling out the infrastructure that we roll out to provide the much needed internet connectivity.
Yeah, and I like this people-centered approach. You know, you keep talking about the importance of lowering the cost. So let's just do, in 60 seconds, let's do a comparison, you know, in terms of Naira. So on a scale of 1 to 100, how would you rate the performance of your service provider in terms of connectivity? And what would you say is the cost in relation to the dollar, you know, per month for a data subscription in Zambia?
Look, there's a lot of components to it, right? And when you look at what we do as Baobab Zambia, it's just a part of it. There's a lot that needs to come into play. I've spoken of energy. Power is a cost. I've spoken of internet. Our internet comes from Europe, as an example. We have to pay in USD terms to bring that back in. So when we talk about the total cost, right now, it might be difficult for me to put a rate to it, but what I can say now is that in the last probably 6-7 years, we have seen the rate of data go down every single year by not less than 20%.
Okay.
Because the demand is growing, and the volume is growing. So where you have huge volumes, we leverage on economies of scale, and we're innovative enough to try and bring the cost down.
I was actually hoping you would, you know, give us the exact sum and from kwacha to the dollar. But we must thank you very much at this time. We've been talking with Lilian Tembo Mutwalu, leading Zambia's digital leap through infrastructure and inclusion. And she's the managing director, Baobab Zambia, who has joined us from Lusaka, Zambia. Thank you very much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And there's more to come on the program. You know, headlines in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. Let's get to the dailies and find out what the dailies are saying. Let's start with the Blueprint newspaper. It leads with a political one. Umahi to Obi orders, join Tinubu's 2027 train. All Southeast governors already on board. Flaunts massive ongoing projects across Igbo land, other regions like governors, PDP, senators reject Atiku's coalition plan. Well, we're not doing this alone. We're being joined by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Sam Kagbo, joining us virtually. SN, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thanks for your patience as well. So this is the Minister of Works, as always, Literally, most of the time I see him, he's literally campaigning for the president, even from the outset. So this is not different, but this time he's saying that others should join in because the Southeast, according to him, he's claiming that all the Southeast governors are on board. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a very interesting phenomenon because APC in particular, they've been very strategic in winning over the opposition. And the Southeast, particularly, you could say is an opposition bloc. It's basically a PDP and of recent Labour region. Of course, you have APCA there too, having a state. So to get an inroad there, you have to be very strategic and deliberate. I think Tinubu has been able to do that. His appointment of Umahi has helped because the East need a lot of infrastructure, and as skeptic as the region is, they would need to have a person that would actually oversee that particular aspect of their own interest, which is the infrastructure. And I think beyond the appointment and the overture to political and stakeholders in the region, I think the Tinubu administration has been doing a lot in the area of infrastructure. The East need a lot of leadership, energy, Port Harcourt, energy, energy, Bakaleke, Onitsha, and all of those places. If Tinubu could actually work on that, he may be able to get the confidence of the people, because for now, what I see is basically overturns at the elite level, but does that actually translate to numbers? The grassroots level, I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in that area.
All right. Let's take a look at the next daily this morning, and that will be the Vanguard newspaper. And this one has gotten a lot of people talking. Pardon, yet again. NAS budgets disagree over 6.93 trillion naira projects in budget 2025. So you see how NAS, that's the National Assembly, inserted over 11,000 projects. That's according to budget. And you see the Senate saying that the 2025 appropriation bill was interrogated and passed based on exact amount presented. And the reps also speak saying NAS has powers to amend budget. So this back and forth, you can almost predict that every year there's some talk about padding here and there. Do you see any issues to it, senior advocate?
Well, I think it's an ongoing conversation, because actually the meeting point and the area for divergence in governance all over the world is in the area of the desire of the government to execute its own program, and the generosity or otherwise of the lawmakers to give them the money to do so, because the Parliament or the National Assembly is actually the one with the authority to appropriate finance for the debt. So this sort of conversation will go on. But we've had a lot of concern over the years about the sincerity and the integrity of the National Assembly in its own involvement in appropriation. Yes, the law says you are the appropriator of the finance, the budget, and all of that. But it's the job of the executive to actually do those projects. It is executive in its own wisdom has cited areas of development and has taken these areas to you for appropriation of funds. It may not be right for you to supplant your own interest, especially now that they have what they call constituency projects, which to me sometimes are much more heavier in the budget than the other projects. That's why we have this haphazard development. We do not have a development plan that is progressive. What you have over the years is this envelope system whereby everybody talks in their own interest, everybody spends in their own interest, and at the end of the day, you have uncompleted projects, you have wasteful projects all over the place. So I would hope that this time around, it is not just a conversation over who to get what, but actually there should be a convergence on the area of development.
Well, let's take a very quick look at The Guardian now, which moves away from politics and the budgeting process to the economy. MPC seeks fiscal support on Naira stability, retains interest rate at 27.5%. That's on the front page of The Guardian, and you see the graphical illustration there of the breakdown of the MPC's decision from yesterday's meeting. And so some would say that it is not unexpected that the Monetary Policy Committee would retain interest rate at 27.5% following the minimal reduction of inflation in the preceding month. But really, shouldn't there have been, other decisions that will also take into account the other aspects of the economy, i.e., the real sector, which is the backbone of the economy, either through a reduction of interest rate? Mr. Kabo.
What you see, yes, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank has its own quarter for it. You see, the government and the central bank cannot talk past themselves over the economy. There is nothing that the central bank can do to control inflation and the value of the naira without a corresponding or complementary effort by the government. So what? Reduce wasteful spending and actually try to move the economy into much more productive areas. Until you have a convergence over the monetary policy and the fiscal policy of the government in terms of revenue generation and expenditure, you may not be having a much more desired result in the area of protecting the naira. Over the years, lending has been very reckless, although I think the data coming now is that there has been a reduction from about 96 to about 68%. Yes, that's a very significant development, but there is a lot more that has to be done. There is the need for diversification of the economy, and I think there are areas of the economy and other sectors that if the government puts effort into that, they'll be able to expand its own revenue generation. It would be dangerous for us to have a government that only looks at statistics. You cannot, at this time, pay much more attention on statistics than you would have been for other projects. Agriculture, to me, is a very, very, very big source of income. If the government policy in agriculture are right, we may be able to have divergence from or a push from what would I call it now? Dependence on oil. We have to go into production. Nigeria has gotten to a point whereby it has to have very serious effort, deliberate effort at production. Because until we have that, until we start having...
Well, Senior Advocate, looks like we just lost connection with you, but a very important point you were making there. But we have to thank you so much for your time. We've been speaking with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Sam Kagbo, who's been breaking down some of the major stories on the front pages for us this morning. Thank you once again, Senior Advocate. But we'll take a quick break now, and when we return, one of the big stories making the rounds in the country. Budget says the National Assembly inserted over 11,000 projects into the budget. The National Assembly says, no, we did not. It is just normal procedure. What exactly is going on here? Well, Budget is right here with us in our studio. I'll be back. Stay with us. So let's break through all of that information and get to the heart of this matter. Yes, Seun Onigbide is right here with us in our Lagos studio. He is the CEO and co-founder Budget. Good morning, Seun.
Good morning.
We're here to talk about the budget.
Yeah.
It's only proper to have budget. Speak to this, particularly with that, what would I call it now? That revelation that was released yesterday by Budget, saying that a total of 11,122 projects culminating in 6.93 trillion naira was inserted into our budget, the 2025 federal budget. Now, it's gotten a lot of people talking. You didn't call it padding, but it's been called padding by others that we're here yet again. Can't we just have this padding thing behind us? But the National Assembly, at least some of the members, have been speaking. One of them saying, well, this is ignorance of their procedure, that they have the powers to amend the appropriation bill because they are lawmakers before it becomes a law. And they said that this went through NDAs and they did a lot of back and forth before it was eventually approved. So they said, well, nothing untoward happened here. So speak to us about where the issue is for you exactly. Is it the insertions in that sense? Because they say they can amend in that sense, which includes insertions. Is it the MDAs that are meant to handle this project, some of whom you described as incompetent to handle it? Or is it the projects themselves? What are the issues here?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for Coyote. The problem is that democracy gives us what you call separation of powers.
Right.
And also ensures that every element is carried along in the whole process. And another thing I always tell people is that with great power comes with great responsibility. The budget is a legislative instrument, but it's not just another legislative instrument. That's how you deliver public goods, public services to the people. So it has to be a well thought out process. It must be premised on planning. It must be anchored on the kind of vision. Our biggest problem with the budget is that between the executive and the legislature, they do not see the budget as an instrument of planning. If you look into that budget, you've had already over 32,000 projects proposed by the executive already. The National Assembly had over 11,000 projects already. Even some agencies, some ministries, like Ministry of Agriculture, had over 1,500 projects added in there. The question you're going to first ask is, what kind of projects are added? The second thing we're going to ask again is that, do the agencies, do they have the requisite capacity? Is it within their scope of work to deliver those projects? The third thing we're also going to ask ourselves is that, is this going to have significant impact in the life of Nigerians from a federal perspective? And I always make this argument that Nigeria does not have infinite resources. Our resources are finite. No matter how much revenues we're declaring right now, we have salaries to pay, we have debts to pay. So what exactly you have left is for the capital expenditure. Now, even in the capital expenditure, you don't have a prioritization. It's not as if you say in all of those projects, you say, this is priority A project, priority B, priority C project. No. What the National Assembly is doing is an abuse of power. For me, it's an abuse of responsibility. Prior to these times, we had constituency projects. There was, until now, there's a band of 100 billion naira given to the National Assembly as constituency projects.
In total, or for the individual?
In total.
In total.
Everybody gets 100 billion. And those
each person gets 100?
No, every National Assembly, the National Assembly as a collective, get 100 billion. And that was what you got between 2010, 2011, 2012, even up to 2014. And you could remember those days, there was always this tussle between the executive and the legislature. It took 5 months or sometimes to pass the budget because they would not just agree that certain items can't go into the budget. But let's not forget, the budget, like, if it's passed, it's a law, it's an act of parliament. It's something that is going to transform the economy or the country. Yeah. So in some sort of way, I look at it and I'm stunned at the level of which citizens are not engaging as they should. You pass a budget into law, then that means you've given license to the entire bureaucracy of government to execute that budget.
So are we saying that first, if lawmakers look at what was presented to them by the MDS, the executive, and they say, well, we think that this should be there, based on the fact that I'm representing a certain group of people, and I think that this project is important to them. So maybe we add this here, add this there. Is that wrong?
Is that within the confines? That should be within the limit. And that's why we had the constituency project.
So is that wrong? That is wrong?
It's not wrong, but how brazen it has become over the years that you had now at boreholes, and then because you don't look at the federal government budget. It doesn't look like a federal government budget anymore. It looks like a local government budget. Everybody is in this provincial mindset of how much can I get in, maybe for myself or for my people in court. Because you look at the federal government and it says, I drove to Bomosho a few days ago, and the road between Oyo and Bomosho is bad. If I had to go through Iwo and I go through Oshobo, that road is bad. If I were to go through Ejigbo, Oshobo, even to Ejigbo, the road is bad. If I had to go from, let's say I'm going from even Ife, and I'm going all the way down there, and it's road. So you look at what should be the federal government's main
priority, right?
And priority. They're not doing it. And we are now, everybody wants to have this nice drone picture of a sea of constituency project or a sea of empowerment projects to prove that as a lawmaker you are working. And you now see this constant tussle, this constant competition to see who is having the largest empowerment project.
So what should be the kinds of projects that lawmakers should lobby into the approval spending limit of the federal government? You made a lot of sense with the fact that this thing looks like local government, what do you call it now, project. Because I think that recently the Senate president just did some empowerment, and I said, see of all kinds of kekena, pep, all sorts. And we see these things, I'm asking myself, these things, we see it almost every other time. Where do they really use them in that sense? Did they really use them, or these are I don't even understand what is going on. So let's begin with the first one I want to find out from you. What kind of projects should lawmakers be influencing on a federal government budget?
Number one, I feel like we have existing abandoned projects, and I think there are over 10,000 of them that have never been completed. And so if you sit with those ones first, that span constituencies, that span states, because it's a federal government budget, let's not forget. I mean, we have a situation where in my state, or the local government chairman has already appropriated for a road. Then the federal lawmaker also wants to build that same road. You understand? So how is that a business of the lawmaker? Because he also wants to do that road and say, I'm working for the people. No, you are a federal lawmaker. Your project, and those days when we had constituency projects, they were focused on maybe schools or maybe even like health clinics. There were more things that many people benefited from. What you see with most empowerment projects are mostly for political mileage. There is no method to the selection of those who benefit from those things. We have countless experiences where those things are put up for sale at the exit point of those distributions. Where some people will get a sewing machine and they are not tailors. Somebody gets a keke napep just because he's the ward leader of a political party. So the indiscriminate way those items are given does not pretend like the best use of public resource, because it's not benefiting a mass of people. You're only using federal projects to benefit a narrow political base. That's what it has been in recent times. And that's why it's more important that the executive, I expected the executive to even push back and say, you know what, because the budget, when we talk about the budget, it's not about what goes on in the appropriation process alone. There should be this understanding that if you don't put it in the budget, I might not fund it if it's not of my priority, if that signal is given. The second thing is that the most MDs now even lobby for those constituency projects. I mean, I've seen letters write to the National Assembly and say, please, can you situate your constituency project in our agency, because we have, and they're making a case like a pitch, that we have a fast procurement process to get these things done for you. So you have a Federal Cooperative College, or G-River. You have a National Building Research, a research institute, now distributing cars for traditional rulers. I mean, small, medium, Smedan there was this empowerment. Spender was distributing cars for traditional. I said, what's the business of a small, medium enterprises development agencies with distribution of cars for
Maybe
traditional?
the traditional rule like
So,
small-scale business.
you've asked us to interrogate it, and it's important, you know, to identify some of those items that you've discovered. You've mentioned a few of them. There's also here 1 billion naira for solar streetlights in Enugu State, and there's 3 billion naira for utility vehicles to support farmers and distribution agents. You know, and when we tie this to what is actually obtainable on ground, there's a big question on agriculture, there's a big question on security. Is there anything in the scope of your work that also follows through with whether or not these projects, as unjustifiable as some of them are actually carried out? And I can refer to something that was also in your 2024 report. That's about 50 billion naira allocated to border security. And we know what border security still is like today.
We have tracker that tracks public projects at the constituency level. But the challenge you see is that when it comes to constituency projects, the first problem I have is that there's always immense pressure on the Treasury, I mean, it's the Accountant General, to get these projects done at the expense of other projects. So you find out that a project that is supposed to exist just to last 5-6 years to be completed can span over a decade. So that's the first problem.
From one budget? From
one budget. So because the constituency project is terminal within a year, compared to you, say you want to do Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, I'm just making an example here. So there's more pressure to deliver projects that are within that year compared to projects that span over a year. So you just get a major project, now get a 10% allocation. So that's my first problem with this constituency project at scale. The second problem you also get is that those projects can be delivered. Some of them are delivered, but you have multiple issues even around the delivery. The selection of contractors for those constituency projects, it's an open secret that the lawmakers significantly influence that. Because now it's more like everybody, I mean, if I'm an agency head and I submit a 24 billion naira project and it comes back from National Assembly at 600 billion, I know the constituency project because it's written there. This one is delivered in XYZ constituency, or Bafemi Owode constituency. And I know that I do not touch this kind of project because it belongs to the lawmaker. So you see that there is a backdoor conversation around the process of that. And in those situations, the delivery is not optimal.
So what are we calling this? Is it this lawmakers allegedly using this as kickbacks or stealing money? What exactly? Let's call it for the name that it is. Because on one hand, there is a part of, I'm familiar with a few of these photo ops, where you just see all of these things and they are clearly photo ops. They sell these things because if everybody keeps giving these things, our roads will not be enough to carry the keke na pep, as we call it right here. So what exactly is going on here? What are we trying to address here?
It's corruption and abuse of the budgetary process. There's no other way to decide it. And I don't think, because there's a National Assembly would tell you, we have the powers of appropriation. And I don't think I contest that. You know, but it also means that in democracy, you must exercise your power responsibly. You know, you have powers of appropriation, but to what extent? We've tried to get Supreme Court to decide on that. They've not been able, the executive has not been able to push that. And even in previous times, the National Assembly and the executive, they sit down and say, what are we going to do? What is going to be your level of adjustment to this budget? Because also this budget has to be realistic. It has to be credible. What I see here is that there's this rush to let's get things done. Let's just sign off this budget. But at the end of the day, you're distorting the entire process. I was listening to your previous speaker who was talking about how the fiscal side and the monetary side, if they are not working hand in hand, it will not get the results. The budget is the fiscal side. You know, trade policy is part of the fiscal side. So if your budget is not tied to discipline, like extreme discipline, you don't have unproductive naira, it's not chasing the dollar. You cannot have an exchange rate balance that is significantly sick. So these things are all connected in a way that the federal government, the National Assembly, and the executive, they have to sit down and ask ourselves, this is getting too brazen. I mean, you walk in some places, even in this Lagos, you would think that a lawmaker is a local government chairman. You would even think he's a state governor of that region. The entire place is fixed. And you ask yourself, what is the responsibility of the state government? Because you have 1,000 and 10,000 of federal government projects that are undone. I just told you, if you can't drive between Ibadan and Ife, the road is a death trap. You can't drive between Ife and Ilesha, the road is a death trap. And those are places I even personally drive. You can't drive between Ikire And sorry, between Iwo and Oshobo, you can't drive between Iwo and Ojibo. You can't even, so you can't even drive 300 kilometers in Southwest.
And they're not covered in the budget.
And they're in the budget, but how much gets into the budget for them? 10 billion naira, 7 billion naira. And you now ask yourself, how long is it going to get these things fixed if we do not put power? This campaign for budget is not about contesting the powers of the National Assembly. It's this kind of way of budgeting, where it's not premised on planning, cannot engender development, cannot take us anywhere.
So for you, and I want us to again reiterate the point, because naturally this will cause a lot of, I'm sure the lawmakers are sending messages to themselves. Have you seen this report? How do we approach this? Some of them have spoken about this. So for you, first, is this illegal?
I don't think it's illegal to adjust the budget by the National Assembly.
Okay, that's one. Two, because looking at the...
Okay, but...
You can make the point.
But I feel like this is also a very corrupt practice.
So it's not illegal, but it's a corrupt practice.
Yeah, because you're not putting the national interest ahead. You're putting yourself.
So this is a morality issue or a corruption issue?
It's a corruption issue. Because you're putting yourself and you're putting your constituency in quotes ahead of what should be of national priorities. I mean, if this was a local government budget and you talk all of those things in, it's fine. Or a state government budget. We will not contest that.
So President Tinubu cannot be at every budget defense session where there is a representative of a ministry of an official from an MDA, but that MDA representative will be there. So how can MDAs be strengthened? Because there is supposedly the principle of checks and balances, that operates between the three arms of government. So how can the MDAs be strengthened to scrutinize certain insertions in the budget such that those unjustifiable elements like, utility vehicles for farmers, empowerment for traditional rulers, do not get into the budget?
I think the first thing is also the budget office. There's a lot of strength that has come from there. Because, I mean, if the budget office just acts like a coalition office, if it's not being able to be an instrument of policy, then there's a big problem. So that's where you have, because in every country, I mean, if you look at the UK, you see how serious they take the budget. Every single thing, even in the United States, the budget is a big thing. Government shutdowns. And there's a lot of, because they understand that it is a key pillar on fiscal policy. So my first thinking is, where is our budget office? What do they do? How much strength have we given to them? The second thing, you also look at the MDAs specifically. And like I've mentioned this, MDAs that even right, because there are some MDAs, if you go back the last 4 years, they're notorious for this. So it's not just because they just find items in the budget themselves. No, some of these MDAs go lobby for these items to be cited within them. Not when they don't even have the requisite capacity to deliver them. I mean, you have an MDA in Enugu State. What's your business doing a project in Yola or in Gombe or even in Sokoto? So there is a big problem in there. So there is a huge incentive, and we all know this. The percentages are being moved. People are getting kickbacks and all of this. So the opportunity is huge for them. The third thing I would also mention is that the control on the side of the executive is to prioritize some of these capital projects. Okay, you can put it in the budget, but the Constitution has not said I must execute this project. Execution of projects is also going to be based on availability of revenue, and in the use of revenue, you have to set priorities. The same priority for paying back the creditors of the federal government is not the same priority of delivering a capital project. So I can say these are not my priorities because I have a bigger agenda. But what you also get is that the federal government loses control in terms of setting priority of this capital project. So there's no coordination between what are the priorities of the planning priorities of the federal government. What are the priorities in terms of even spending priorities of the federal government? So there is no coordination. I could remember previously, Okonjo-Iweala was big on the fact that the budget office had to reside in the finance office because she knew that if I do not have the budget office with me, I cannot control I have to be able to control the entire value chain, the budgeting even and the finance side. And these are the problems you have when there's a dichotomy, when there's a gap in between. The planning is separate from the spending side. So there has to be even coordination from the side of government that what is of priority. Because if you put if you put these street lights in the project, or you put this solar power project, which break down almost after every 1 year or 2 years, we have also done a bit of research on that. what you get is that, and you don't get it funded. Next year, you don't do it again. But if you put it there and you exert a bit of pressure and you put MBDs on this intense pressure and those projects get done and you get your own part of that share, then definitely next year you get more brazen and more brazen. And now you have a situation where people feel, maybe I'm a ranking member of this house because I'm the appropriation chair, or maybe I'm the majority leader. So people talk about $1 billion. There are people whose constituency got 15 billion in this project, in this 2025 budget.
So you're talking governance. So let's help. I want you to help the executive manage the complexity of governance and politics, because these guys are politicians. There's something they are looking at. I think it was I think a former lawmaker in Osun State who was saying that in the 2025 budget, each federal lawmaker in the reps has about $1 billion naira constituency project, and each senator has 2 billion. It was trending online. Now, I want you to help them understand how to manage the complexities of the political end, just like you talk about the constituents. Because I can tell you for a fact, there are people that are called political stakeholders. They don't have any job. They follow governors around, they follow senators around, and these guys need to be served. As offensive as that sounds, this is how they oil the wheel ahead of any election. I can almost call names, but I'm not going to do that. I mean, people who follow governors, they don't have any other thing to do. For a fact, follow these lawmakers. Perhaps it's how they service these people to help them with the machinery of elections and all of that. How should the executive manage that complexity? Because I just gave you the reality of why these spendings could happen.
But we cannot afford that. That's our biggest problem. Because if we say, if it feels like $1 billion will be enough today, tomorrow then you need 2 billion, then you need 3 billion. The question is, let's ask ourselves, what's the work of a lawmaker? What's the lawmaker supposed to do? When do we turn lawmakers into contractors, into people who must bring grandiose projects into constituencies? The purpose of a lawmaker, you have existing institutions in your constituency. Focus on ensuring that those constitutions get the right allocation and it gets delivered. But because now we have a line that we keep pushing, and we keep pushing the boundaries. And my own view, you executive do not even, the National Assembly, even the government, do not have the resources to back.
Mr. Nigbine, we're talking about the ideal versus reality.
And
then the complexity of the fact that if the executive doesn't allow this, that budget is not going to get passed. You and I know that.
And I say
there's a negotiation between the executive and it will not pass.
And that's the beauty of the beauty of democracy is what you call forbearances. You know, and us be able to understand. If I'm a National Assembly head and you are the presidency, even before the budget gets into the House, I have a meeting with you. And I'm going to ask you, we're bringing the 43 trillion naira budget to you. I need your help that your cap for this whole constituency project was be 400 billion naira. It's going to be 500 billion naira now, because I also understand things have moved forward. But apart from this 500, well, we're going to have a sheet of 500. You go and decide internally how you want. And we were smart before this budget was passed, we were working with the National Assembly for a bill, a constituency project bill, to say let's set a cap for this constituency project as a share of the capital project, because we even understand that in Brazil, in the US, we've done a lot of study that these things also exist. They call it pork and barrel projects. Let's set it, but there's a cap. You don't start touching the Social Security money or Medicare or Medicaid money in the US because you want to be the best lawmaker in town. Let's set a cap to say every constituency, every capital expenditure presented by the executive, 2.5%, 5% of that is going to be for constituency projects. And there will be a list of all of that, public and transparent to everybody. And those projects will be not just for empowerment, which is to serve yourself solely, will also benefit many more people within the constituency. But, I mean, nobody wants to touch that. Everybody wants to have a blank check to be able to modify the budgets.
Particularly as we build up to the elections. But make no mistake, there are Nigerians out there who have seen that budget, who have even seen your report, and they're excited because they're like, our lawmaker, in quote, got us borehole, got us street lights, so he's doing well, we need to re-elect him. But sadly, that's, for them, that is what democracy should be like, when there should be more than that. And sadly, it's where we find ourselves. Even though the lawmakers have said they don't touch the money, it's the agencies that implement them. But again, we know some of these things. Now, my point is, let's push this forward. What must happen after this? So we're able to elevate this conversation. Should we be having a conversation with the ICPC? I don't know if the FCC should be involved, but should be having a conversation with the ICPC. Should the constituency people be calling their lawmakers and saying, well, we heard this thing, no, come, what exactly are you doing there? What is going on? So how do we push this forward and ensure that we don't go over this next year, the year after? So should we get anti-corruption agencies involved? I mean, CSOs are speaking, right? Should the people also get involved? If they should get involved, what must they do?
I think the first thing we need to do is, there's a law already. So first we have to agree that it's an appropriation act. So
well, we can't do anything about it.
So we have to first find a way to track this project. And I've had a few people reach out to say they want to form coalitions of Nigerian Bar Association. Even at that level, they want to pay attention more to this. So definitely we will have to track those projects and make sure that for those who funds are released, those projects are done. The second thing is also have to put a lot of pressure on the executive to prioritize its capital projects. Because every time we are borrowing a lot of money, we're expanding deficits. I mean, look at how much money Buhari government borrowed to keep ways and means and that borrowed and all of that. And you still can't drive 300 kilometers or 200 kilometers road in southwest Nigeria. And I always challenge people, put maybe 200 kilometers smooth southwest road in southwest Nigeria. I can't find it.
I think the closest we have is the Lagos to Ibadan, which is not up to that.
Which is not even up to that.
Yeah.
So except you want to turn back. I know, I'll go back.
Do it twice.
I'll do it twice. I mean, so the problem is that it's also because there was no priority of to say these are the things I want to focus on. So the executive has to sit back and say, what will be our legacy? Because everybody's going to forget the keke napeps, the
sewing machines,
the sewing machines and all of that.
The motorcycles and the rest.
So that's when you have to now ask yourself, what is going to be our priority? It looks like federal government is having a lot of money now. Revenue looks nice and that good. But you're also going to pay much more debt. You're also increase salaries. You're also creating so many agencies in Northwest, North Southwest, commissions and all of that. It's also taking about $1 trillion there. So it has to be also very deliberate about what exactly is going to be our priority. So that we don't do all of this. Even if National Assembly puts 6.9 trillion, puts over 11,000 projects. And we also have to be honest about our state capacity. Can we really execute over 40,000 projects every year in the budget? It's not possible. We don't have the state capacity to do that. So also being honest about what we can do. So those are the advocacy we push. We engage the executive to say, do more to set priorities for capital projects. For the National Assembly, I think our push is still there should be a cap. And it sounds a bit, see, we're undermining their wide appropriation powers, but no, just be able to put a little bit of responsibility to it. There should be a cap of what should be, we should be able to be honest about constituency projects in Nigeria. We need it. It's necessary. Everybody wants to go back to in my own time in government. This is what I'm able to do. But it must be on two principles. One, fairness in terms of distribution. Because I'm a Senate committee chair for finance or appropriation, doesn't mean I get an outsized amount. If someone is from Taraba, gets almost next to nothing, but maybe because he's not connected, maybe because he's a member of the opposition party. So there must be fairness. There must be inclusion. It's not just going to be a narrow project for a narrow elite, local elite are using to advance your political interests. Let it be things that can benefit more people.
And I think it will be a time to stop doing all of the putting the picture and the names of the lawmakers on projects. You used our money to do this thing. Why is your face and your name on it?
And some of them go brazen and they write donated by on it. Yeah, we've seen that. We've gotten a lot of people to change that.
No, it's everywhere. It's our money.
Don't go too far. Just go to, what's this junction here? Garage. You see now, even police vehicles, you see donated by a lawmaker.
Yeah, a lawmaker.
Yeah.
It wasn't donated by you. You used our money to do the project. So donated by Nigerians. I think that's what we should have.
You know, I commend what you're doing, and I think you should even go further, because of the fact that there's something you mentioned that I don't want us to skip. It's the fact that some of these projects, some of these things they buy, is purely for photo ops. I have close friends in government, and I can tell you, for instance, that some of those things, as they live there, they are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's true. It is what it is.
Not going anywhere.
They are not going anywhere.
So
they just put this drone shot as they leave that place. Some of them are not going anywhere.
So, Mr. Onigbinde, in winding down now, every year we're at this table and we're talking about the wide powers of the National Assembly. And the National Assembly is saying, oh, budget is wrong. It's within our powers to, you know, include this and remove that. In asking the Attorney General of the Federation to approach the Supreme Court to define the powers of the National Assembly. What's your recommendation for what should be the limit to the National Assembly? I mean, the Fiscal Responsibility Act speaks about, you know, limits to borrowing, and yet the government exceeds that time and again. Can we really legislate behavior?
We should be able to, and if in different places, they do not give these open-ended powers to the National Assembly. When in the US, they are statutory spending. They are already committed, so you cannot adjust that. And I think that's what has to happen. There has to be limit into what, because what I would agree is that there should be a cap of how much new projects you can introduce. That's what I would say, ideally. Put a cap to say this is a certain percentage of the budget is what you can introduce in it. But you can modify existing project that has been presented. So if I say Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, I budgeted 20 billion for it. And as a member of that constituency, I feel that 20 billion would not be enough for Lagos-Ibadan. I can make it 30 billion or 40 billion because I want to accelerate that project to be delivered. But I cannot bring a new project and appropriate whatever I think it's fine for it. So that, I think, it should be that. Then you can cap. You could also be able to introduce new projects, but there should be a cumulative cap for the entire National Assembly about what you can put in there, so that you don't throw away that power for them to modify, but you also ensure that that power comes with a lot of responsibility.
So perhaps is the stealing, alleged stealing, let me contextualize it, that is causing these heavy spendings, and yet we're not seeing impact at the end of the day.
It's too fragmented. Spending the way federal government spends money, it's not targeted. It's as if you have a big loaf of bread and you have a small butter and you're trying to spread, you know, you're trying to spread it. It can't be pleasant.
Our budget size is not even $55 billion.
Yeah,
trillion. This is clearly...
No, $55 billion, both the state and the federal put together.
Absolutely. So
how much is that?
It's an ongoing conversation. We have the whole year to follow this, and you talk about tracker. There's Nigerians as well, the anti-corruption agency. So we really have to put our
the state budgets to
the state budgets where our money is going to. But we have to thank you so much. Why are we using butter? We can use Akara for the break. We've been speaking with Seun Onigwe, the CEO and co-founder of Budget. Thank you so much for the work you do. And we're looking forward to the State of States.
Oh, yeah. It's going
when is it coming out? This year?
This is the 10th edition.
Yeah.
So it's going to be special. It's October this year.
Look forward to October.
It's always October.
That's for 2024.
2024, yeah. Okay. Because it takes a while to compile.
Absolutely. So thank you for the good work.
Thank you.
So something to chew on for every Nigerian, okay? It's not just for us or the CSOs or the anti-corruption agencies. You must also be a part of it. These things must stop. But we'll take a quick break now. When we return, we have a legendary gentleman joining us. His name is legendary Ben Sharp. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Let's speak with Benedict Oriaifo, popularly known as Legendary Ben, right here in our Lagos city. He's a comedian and a creative. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having
me. And you look good, by the way.
I appreciate it.
Truly Nigerian. Tell us about this. Let's do red carpet.
Looks sharp.
Yeah, it looks
sharp.
That's more perfect. Sharp.
Okay, whatever that is. So let's do a little bit of a red carpet.
Okay.
For you. So you're already on the red carpet. So what are you wearing?
Okay. I'm wearing Reposition.
Okay.
It's my designer's, one of his masterpieces.
Okay.
This is just Senator Native, black, looking good.
It's one of the questions I hate the most on the red carpet. They ask you, okay, tell us about, you know, for me, I have watched a lot of comedians. I have seen a lot come and go, and some are still in the business. And I've concluded that comedy is one of the most difficult crafts where people think it is not. Because you have to be churning out new content every other time, else it's not like you're going to sing a song you've recorded. Tell us how you've been able to keep up with the challenge of coming up with new stuff every other time you're on stage, because that is a big deal.
Yes, coming up with stuff like that comes from passion. Passion fuels it. So the passion for it is what helps me on the days where I'm getting low views, where the ideas are not coming. It's the passion that just still keeps me wanting to like brainstorm, look at everyday life, finding how I can relate it to people to connect. So it's a passion that fuels everything that I do.
I know that sometimes, you know, they say some people are great on stage, others are great on social media. Do you also do stage? Because I know you're more of a social media guy.
No, for now, just social media.
Okay. How lucrative is that? We always like to ask that question because when we see people buy Benz, sorry for using the brand, big cars and big houses. In terms of commercialization, how are you working in on that?
Okay. That's very important.
I didn't say you should tell me how much you earn.
Yes,
in case, I don't want to put you on that spot. I know it's an early question.
But don't mind Jeffrey. You doesn't mind if you tell him what the actual figure is.
I don't want LIRS to come to you. It's fine.
So for monetization, it's usually brand deals, in-app content monetization, because apps like YouTube, TikTok, they pay, you understand? But mostly it's brand collaborations, working with brands, telling their stories in the best way possible. So personally, I've been able to brand myself as Legendary Ben, a multimedia storyteller, a culture curator, comedian, an actor, and a model. So I've been able to balance all of this into connecting with brands, reaching people.
I'm sorry I'm chuckling, because I see you speaking, and I'm just trying to marry Legendary Ben, who's right here with me, and the sharp Legendary Ben on social media. You started with, I think this is where I found you. I'm a big fan of your work, I must say. We're going to sign an autograph after this. So I noticed your content with the kitchen utensils thingy.
Yes.
Right? So the knife is talking to the pot, or the pot is talking to the seasoning container, or the microwave is talking to the iron. And then it's just a play on words that gets me a lot of times. I don't see it coming. I like to think I'm very good with writing and, you know, punchlines. Yes. And then you just deliver, and I'm like, what's going on in your head? So let's start with that, your journey from that. Were you just bored one day in the kitchen, you just saw the sharp, and the knife told you sharp?
Actually, something close to that. I saw a toaster and a bread. I was like, you know, in Nigerian dialect, we use toast to woo. So I was like, imagine the toaster actually toasting the bread. So
sharp.
So I was like, okay. Then I started writing lines that actually relates to the toaster. And I use wordplay as a form, because wordplay is problem solving. And problem solving drives happiness. That's for humans.
Really? Wordplay is problem solving?
Yes.
And problem solving drives happiness for humans.
Sharp. Because problem solving, I drop a word, is the delivery. I drop a wordplay, you hear it, you're like trying to decipher it. Immediately you decipher it, there's this form of happiness that comes. You just solve the problem. Before you handle that one, another one is landing. So at the end, there's just this joy that it inspires.
That's why I don't like puzzles.
And you know, the wordplay is not just for the kitchen utensils, Kyle. If you have watched enough of the content, you see, you know, that interplay with food as well.
Yes.
And that's so beautiful to watch. In fact, for all your other contents, you know, they're defined by the wordplay. And I'm wondering, you're just showing off your skills. Were you an A student in school? And, you know, talk to us about that. Yeah. Why there always seems to be the abstract, you know, featuring prominently in your content?
Okay, I like to infuse humor and just make the ordinary extraordinary, like from the little things in your kitchen to...
Why do you like kitchen so much?
No, I actually have other episodes with car.
He does others, but this is where he's...
I've seen a lot of food on his page, so...
The kitchen part.
Yes, that's like another thing. I'm a cultural curator. I try to project Nigerian culture globally, you understand? So that's how I bring in the meals, everything. But aside from that, you asked if I'm
Is there an academic in you that is, you know, also finding expression in your work?
Are you thinking of your JAMB result? Your WAEC result didn't look like, you know what?
But I studied accounting.
No way.
So, no way.
So it's a very different field. But
worlds apart.
Yes, but in secondary school, we went through art class to get to, so there was a lot of foundation with that. Then the personal love for arts, I consume a lot of arts. So my delivery usually stems from the consumption and my need to express myself through art.
How
Connect with
challenging
a lot
can
of
it be
people.
sometimes for you?
Challenging?
Is it always fluid for you?
Oh, no.
So I want you to walk us through that challenge.
Okay.
And you're going to do something for us as well on the
wow.
show. So I want you to process that. So they solve
Right.
problems for us as well.
Sharp.
And the legwork too.
Oh, I'll deliver. Okay. Sorry, question again.
About challenges.
Okay, for challenges, creative block. There are sometimes that nothing is coming. Like, you have ideas, but you can't execute them. So most times I just sit back and just calm down, because I'm human too. So I just calm down and consume. I read, because it opens your mind. I read a lot, so it helps you through the whole phase. Then after consuming, you just learn a lot through that process. I make sure I consume so I can learn a lot and apply, because the main thing is application and impact. That's how I handle it.
I must again talk about your creative process, and that's something we have stayed on.
Yes.
How difficult is it? Or you're an A student? Because it's important to master your creative process and now be able to do great stuff. How long does it take you to come up with a 2-minute video?
Okay. It all depends on the script.
Right.
I have some scripts that have kept me 1 week. I'll just be looking at the script like...
1 week?
Yes, like, but there are some that just flow.
Straight up?
I just wake up in the morning, the idea hits me, I just start scripting, walking around, because I pace around while scripting. So I just walk around, script, and boom.
It just happens.
It's ready.
Now, what you do with your content is you have to shoot a lot of angles.
Yes.
So maybe you also do a lot of biblical content.
Yes.
I must say you try to make it relatable.
Yes,
Maybe Jesus.
to connect it.
Exactly, just to connect, and it's just beautiful to see.
Thank you very much.
So you have to shoot different angles. You have to shoot maybe with a green screen, and then you have to put all of that together.
It's a whole process.
It's a whole process, right? Again, I want to ask you. You studied accounting.
Yes.
So why did you transition to content creating? Is it a Nigerian thing like Onokon Waja? How did you transition?
It was just the need to share ideas, because I was not being able to break that creative, like present myself creatively through accounting. So the idea aspect it started with me. My brother told me he wanted to like go into content creation. I was like, Immediately ideas started coming to my head, and I was sharing it with him. I was like, why are you sharing me your ideas? Just create them. I was like, actually, why did I not think of that?
You never worked as an accountant?
I worked as an accountant during NYC last year. That's my only experience as an accountant. And I was able to learn a lot, structure, a lot of things there. So
Are you ever going to explore that part as well?
Very possible, because it's...
Is this content creation, is this what you do exclusively? Do you do any other thing?
Exclusively, I'm a content creator.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And you play different characters as well.
Yes.
Did you have any prior training as an actor? How does it come to you naturally?
I feel it's just God's blessings, the talents. So if I envision something, that's another beautiful about content creation. If I envision it, like I just see myself creating it. That's the main thing. But there's no real strong background in acting or anything involved. The execution always just works. So I feel it's just good.
There's a controversial question I would like to ask you. Recently, there's been a guy called, I think, SK Records.
Oh, yeah.
Or he's been doing some Save Our Society campaign, ending homosexuality in the creative industry. For him, he believes that creatives like you and every other person who is working really hard for many years are not promoted by blogs. But as soon as somebody comes to behave, a man behaving like a woman, there's a latest guy, I think he's in Mecca something. I never got to know of him until that incident. And so they're advocating that this has to stop. They feel that there's a rite of passage to popularity through homosexuality in that sense. Is that something you've noticed as well?
I don't think that's a thing, because I've not personally experienced it. Because most people I look up to in the industry are people that I watch them grow. I watch them do their thing from beginning, putting their efforts, putting the work, and it actually worked out. They grew. So the homosexuality aspect is very different from people doing their thing and growing. I feel he's trying to speak out on something, but the means he's going through it's not the best.
And it's something to really watch out, be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
I know there's now having characters. You know, you had a lot of content creators who started off dressing as a female, some ladies dressing as men. So there's a, you know, getting into the character beat, you dress up and all of that. But there seems to be some sort of extreme now where they are now the
projecting it.
exactly, almost like it's even everybody's faces, and you have children, almost everybody watching, and you wonder what will become of these people when they think this is a normal thing to do. So that's why that point was made. But I want to speak about partnerships, collaboration, because I think content creators are now big on collaboration now. Again, you tell us if you don't mind doing big screen stuff. But I see you working with Meshki.
Yes.
I think, do you have a clique? It's like you guys have a clique.
No, really.
The twin, are they twin? Those guys that behave like preachers, what are their names?
Tri-clowns.
Yeah, Tri-clowns.
Great
You also work with them.
Yes.
I think. So is there like a clique thing in this content?
No, not really. The content creation industry is very busy because everybody wants to work with, like, we just want to work together. So if I reach out and they are interested, they just agree. It's not like a clique where we have a group chat or anything, but we just connect. Once you connect to my work and I connect with yours, you just
Because you had this content you guys did in the car. There was you, Meshki, and the AMVCA winner.
EU Prosper.
EU Prosper. And I think you did something else again.
Yeah,
You've done...
No, that day, we actually shot like 6 videos in one day.
So what content creators do is you take a whole day and you shoot different content.
Yes, that was actually my first day shooting that much in a day because my content, my content usually takes a lot, from editing to script writing to everything. The whole delivery takes a lot. So that day I was super surprised. Like, we're done one. We're like, okay, next idea, because EU was traveling next day and we needed to like cook together.
Okay, so the ideas come spontaneously like that?
Yeah, sometimes. It just flows. But
he has to teach us the leg work.
Oh, yeah. I got you.
So, I'll be observing, by the way.
So, over here.
I'm certainly not doing the legwork with this.
So, how does it work?
Color shift so that
there are three.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are 3 steps.
Just teach me. Okay, 3 steps.
In 1 minute. Let's wait in 1 minute.
Okay, so this is the first one. The first one you go.
If you want to see Joe Biden.
Yeah, then the second one you like. This one is happy feet.
No, we have to be slow with this one.
This one goes.
Kyrie, don't enjoy yourself.
Yep. Then you go up.
Just imagine me doing it the way he's doing it.
Then the last one is
what?
So it's just very interesting.
So I'm not the only person that can't dance today. So
no, you're not. I danced with him. Meshki. No.
Legendary.
Legendary.
Sharp.
And you look sharp.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all you do and wish you the very, very, very best. Benedict Oreifo, Legendary Ben. Continue to look, and we pray your page grows as fast and as big as you want it to be. Thank you for coming.
Now that I've called Meshki, I've called you Meshki. Maybe we have to have Meshki next week.
Oh, yes.
Legendary Ben, thank you for the great work. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's it on the program for today. Of course, we'll be right back here tomorrow, God willing, to do the best we can to highlight what's going on around the country and around the world. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga. Bye-bye.
We hope the rest of your week will be as, happy as a legwork and legendary as Legendary Ben. Thank you for watching. I'm Bukola Koka.
Naturally, I want to ask you to stay sharp and have a great day. I'm Kayode Okikilu. Stay with us right here on Channels Television. Goodbye.